One is I am literally the only thing between you and the pub. And secondly, you run the real risk of someone speaking before you stealing your thunder. Thanks, Phil. So no, I don't mean it. So hopefully a lot of the stuff I'm going to cover now are going to actually build on what Phil said in the first presentation. So I guess I've got a title, so there you go, I'll leave that there. So just in the same vein, I'll just do a quick introduction. So about 2 months ago, Lisa and Rob said, can you come and do a talk for us at the next Agile Roundabout? And I said, of course, yeah, I've got loads of canned talks, I can bring them up and put them up on the screen, I'll be more than happy to come and talk. And they said, no, we want you to talk about Scrum at scale. And I went, ugh, do I have to? And they said, yeah, that's the theme of the evening. So I said, okay, right, I'll do a Scrum at scale one. So I've put this kind of lightning talk together. Hopefully it's going to be about the right time, but I haven't really timed it, so I'm just going to wing it. My name's Darren Yeates. I work for RBS. I've only worked for RBS for about a year. My background is in software development. I was a C and C++ software developer for nearly 15, 20 years, mainly in the aerospace and avionics sectors. In 2006, I was working for a small telecoms company down in Leatherhead, and my boss walked in on a Monday morning and put the book called Scrum by Jeff Sutherland on my table and said, do that. And of course, I had a read of the book, and I don't think he quite realized what he was unleashing at the time. But ever since 2006, I've kind of been doing Agile and Scrum and product owners and team leading and all that kind of stuff in various different guises for various different companies, and kind of helped, help companies understand how they can deliver stuff better. All right. So my role right now in RBS is Agile Transformation Lead. I help what we call the Ways of Working program. Yeah, I know, it's a program. And the idea of that is to basically help the bank move to a future way of working which is more customer and value focused, right? So, we talk a lot about Agile, but actually what I talk a lot about is just being value driven and delivering what the customer wants, because Agile isn't really the goal, right? Agile is just a means to an end of what we want to achieve. So, what I want to do now, and as I've only got 20 minutes, I'll crack on and stop talking about myself and RBS. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a case study around something probably most of you have seen. It's a really, really good example of where scaling was attempted and fell flat on its face and was a really, really big failure. And it's this. Has anyone seen the film Fantasia? A few of you. Okay, right. So what we've got here, we got this guy here. He's called Mickey. He's an Agile coach. All right. So he's an Agile coach, and he's been on a 2-day Scrum Master course, right? And after the 2-day Scrum Master course, he's turned around and he's an Agile coach, and he's been put into this position where he has now to coach this single team, and this single team have a little bit of knowledge of how they're doing Scrum and how they're going to roll it out. But this guy's been on his 2-day Scrum Master course. He's got the badge, right? He knows it all. So he's going to now go and help this team do Scrum and do Agile. Okay. Now, that's kind of okay. That's basically where I was in 2006, right? I had the book plonked on my desk and I read the book. I hadn't gone on a Scrum Master course at that point. And that may work, but as we all know, because probably a lot of us have been in that position, this guy here, this team here, is going to have a lot of issues. They're going to have a lot of failings. They're going to have a lot of learnings. They're going to really kind of go through the ringer in terms of actually trying to get this to work. So those of you who've seen this film, kind of, it doesn't really go that well, right? Because he tries to scale too quickly, right? He got the one broom working quite nicely, right? And as soon as he did that, he said, oh, okay, I like the idea of this, I'm going to scale up. So he started scaling up. And in this case, he was a sorcerer's apprentice, right? So he was using magic, right? Which is call it, I don't know, scaled agile framework or something like that. So he was using this thing called magic, right? To try and scale up the organization and scale up the work to let him to do it a lot quicker than he did. He had some marginal success at the start, which really encouraged him to go a bit further. So he went a little bit further, and he got to a point where he goes, you know what, I think it's great. I can step back and just put my feet up on the table and just let the rest of the organization run with what they did. Now, for those of you who've seen the film, you know how it ends, right? He nearly floods the entire room, and at some point, the sorcerer runs back into the room, realizes what he's doing, and has to fix the mess that the Agile coach had deployed into the company. So a really simple example, but the point is that change is hard. So whether it's being a sorcerer's apprentice, whether it's deploying Scrum, whether it's deploying Scrum at scale, every time you try and introduce change into an organization, you will face resistance from one point or another. And the thing about this is that a lot of the time we roll out Scrum bottom up from teams. So developers like the idea of this, it's what they've been taught, it's what they know. But at some point, it's going to touch people other than the development team. It's going to touch finance, communications, product management. All different parts of the organization are going to be touched as more and more people or more and more teams start to do this stuff, right? So we need to realize that the more we touch of the organization, the more resistance to change we're going to get towards that change. Now, we are here, okay? We are here. We have an existing culture. So Phil was talking a lot about culture in his talk, and what I want to do is kind of just re-emphasize, I guess, how important that really is. Okay. So when we start our let's call it an agile transformation, right? I hate the word transformation because it implies a beginning and an end, right? And that's not what we want. But let's call it an agile transformation because our boss has told us that we've got to do agile, and we're going to do it via an agile transformation. So we've got an existing culture, and we say, great, that's fantastic. We've got a strategy to roll out Agile in the company. So what we've got to do now is read a few Agile books, understand what we need to do it, and then apply it to our organization. Now, the problem with that is that at some point, you're going to hit the principle that I showed you on the last slide. You're going to get resistance. You're going to get change. You're going to get things like P3M turn around to you and say, no, you can't do that because you need to provide this, right? And this will never work in this part of the organization because of, right? You can fill in the dots because you probably will have something along those lines being said to you personally. And what happens is people rubber band back to their old behaviors. So they get agile, they've been on the training courses, but when the pressure comes on, or when people suddenly can't do something, they will rubber band back to what they know, their old behaviors. And at some point or another, when that momentum builds, what actually happens is you just go back to your culture that you had before. You may be using new words, right? You may be calling things agile. Instead of a program manager, you've now got product owners. Instead of team leads, you've got scrum masters, right? Instead of a requirements document, you've got a backlog. But actually, under the scenes, under the hood, you haven't really changed that much, right? You're still trying to deliver, you've probably all heard of water scrum fall or agile or hybrid projects, right? We all kind of see them happening at some point, and that's generally because of what happens here, right? We want to do agile, but we can't change our existing organizational culture or structure or process, all right? So we're painting you into a corner, but can you do it please anyway? So, has anyone seen Conway's Law before? Anyone familiar with Conway's Law? So there's a lot of corollaries to this, but Conway's Law is any organization that designs a system will inevitably produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. This is real, all right? This is a really strong, what I'm going to call magnet, right? Or elastic band. As soon as you pull away from elastic band, it tries to pull you right back to where you started from. So we mentioned it earlier, or Phil mentioned it earlier, if you want to change culture, and culture is a very fluffy thing, right, to get. A lot of our management, when we talk about culture, they go, don't need to know about culture, just tell me when stuff's going to get done, right? But culture is a really important thing. And Conway's Law effectively mandates if you're going to be successful in cultural change within your organization. Right. I'm going to talk about crash diets just quickly. In 1970, Vogue, the magazine, published, literally in their magazine, something called the wine and eggs diet. Now, this was proposed, and this is a real diet, you can Google it, it was out there, that if you followed this diet with one hard-boiled egg and one glass of white wine, preferably Chablis, and a black coffee for breakfast, 2 hard-boiled eggs, poached if necessary, 2 glasses of white wine, preferably Chablis, I guess. It doesn't specify, but I'm guessing it's the same. And a black coffee. And then for dinner, you have a really tiny steak, grilled with black pepper, with lemon juice, and the remainder of the bottle of wine. But just make sure you just don't go through 1 bottle of wine per day, right? And another black coffee. Then you will lose a load of weight, right? And you probably would, to be honest, right? But the thing is, you'd probably be so wasted, you wouldn't realize you're wasting away. So I think crash diets are a really good kind of way of thinking about how companies try and adopt Agile, right? They see this thing, they know they've got to lose weight, they know they've got to be more efficient. They say, right, we're going to go on a diet. We're going to do this thing called Scrum. We're going to do this thing called Agile, right? If we follow this recipe, then we're going to lose weight. But we all know crash diets don't work. Some of you may be okay. But generally what happens is you lose a bit of weight, and then at some point, you fall off the wagon or whatever, and you end up going back to the way you were, right? Like that J-curve that I showed you at the start. To properly lose weight, you need to change the way you behave as an individual. You need to change the lifestyle that you're running, right? And that's the same when adopting Agile in organizations. You need to understand that you need to change the lifestyle to make the change stick. So this is how we should be thinking, right? So we've got an existing culture right here. That's where we started before. But what we need now is a completely brand new structure. And this is difficult, right? As most of you probably finding out. But because we have a new structure, we start to generate new behaviors. And because we start to generate new behaviors, we start to generate new habits. And because we just start to generate new habits, over time, what we end up with is a new culture. We haven't got anywhere to rubber band to. We cut that rubber band from our old culture, and our old habits don't tend to resurface. But this is really scary to a lot of organizations because they're like, well, that's hard, right? And scaling is hard. And that's why when we talk about scaling, it's very easy to kind of jump on the SAFe or the LESS or the Nexus or the whatever scaling framework bandwagon that you want to do. But fundamentally, whatever scaling framework you choose won't work unless you accept that this is something you're going to have to do in your organization. And that may be small scale or it may be large scale, right? So going back to the same question Phil asked earlier, don't ask, how do we scale? Ask, why do you want to scale? So what problem is it going to fix? Who's it going to benefit? And what outcomes are you expecting? All right, that's what you really need to understand. And if the answer to that question is any of these things I'm going to put up now, things like that, all right, is it because you want to ensure you can centralize control, governance, and visibility? Ooh. Yes, please. We're a big, large corporate company. We have to do that. But we want to do Agile, and we want to be seen to be doing Agile, but we still want all of that. So do you know what? This thing over here, I quite like the look of that. And hang on a minute, can we send people on training courses for it? Okay, that's great. And can we get people certified in it? Oh, that's even better, right? Let's do that. So if the answer to that is, if you're reading that and you're thinking, yeah, that's pretty much my company, right? I just stop, right? That's a different version of the stop sign that we had earlier. So just stop what you're doing and rethink, right? But of course, that may not be the answer. The answer you may have is, okay, well, we've got to give the middle managers something to do, right? What are they going to do if we go and roll out Agile? What are they going to do? Because the teams are kind of autonomous now, and we've got product owners managing the product, and we've got senior managers, kind of doing this, that, and the other. What do all the middle managers do? So again, if that is something that you're thinking why you're going to scale, that's the reason why you're scaling, then you kind of just need to kind of rethink the way why you're doing it. Okay, and of course there's the old. I was going to say the old. I say there's the classic one that we hear so much, which is, oh, okay, you've been told to do an Agile transformation. So you Googled it and are now deploying SAFe. Now, the thing that I've got, the problem I have with this word here, right, is that, as I said, it implies a start and an end. Our organizations isn't a caterpillar. We aren't something that can kind of bundle ourselves up into a chrysalis and after 3 months pop out as this nice, beautiful butterfly. That's a transformation, all right? Agile doesn't happen like that as much as you like to think it will do. It's something you learn to grow into. It's an evolution or revolution, use whatever word you want, but it's not a transformation, right? Even though we label it as Agile transformations many of the time. So if you're doing that, that's another one, right? So we've really got to make sure that we kind of catch that and stop it straight in its tracks. What we really want to be talking about is say, well, do you know what? We've tried this stuff in a team or a couple of teams, and it's working quite well, and we're getting some benefits. You know, we're able to deliver stuff in 2 months that used to take 6 months or 18 months or whatever it was. Fantastic. Okay, well, we really like the idea of that. How can we take that goodness and move it and give it across to other teams over here in different parts of the organization? If that's what you want to do, that's fantastic, all right? That's brilliant. That's awesome. I was wondering what that was going to look like on these screens, but it does look quite good. But even before then, right? So you've kind of decided, yes, we want to scale out this goodness. But you think, well, hang on a minute. There's probably quite a lot of stuff we can do without even trying to scale, without using any of those frameworks. Before we even go that way, is there anything we can do better that's going to improve us as an organization, full stop, right? Because sometimes you can scale without even knowing that you're scaling. So let's just try and talk about those. First things first, properly organize your work and your people. What we tend to do is we have a collection of people in teams or organizations or parts of the organization, and you know, they're already molded into teams that people knows who does what and all that kind of stuff. And when new work comes in, we say, great, there's a new piece of work, we'll give it to this team over here. Oh, there's another new piece of work, we'll give it to this team over here. So we organize our work, we organize our people first, and then we organize our work around our people. That's not the most efficient way to do it. So the most efficient way to do it is the first thing you need to do is organize your work. What is it we want to deliver? Once you've done that and have your roadmap or good idea of what it is you're going to deliver, you can say, well, okay, well, what's the most optimal design of structure or people that we can have to help deliver that work? A few years ago, I was working with in BA Systems, and one of the teams I was working with, or one of the business units I was working with, we were sitting in a management meeting around Christmas time. We were looking at the kind of Q1 to Q3 roadmap of work we'd like to deliver in the new year. And we were saying, well, okay, who are we going to put in what teams? How big are the teams going to be? And someone, not going to say who, but someone stuck their hand up and said, well, is this the right thing? Are we the right people to answer this question? Should we not go and ask the teams how they would structure themselves to deliver this work? So that's what we did, right? So we went to the teams and said, look, guys, can you take the roadmap away? And can you go away and spend the next week looking at it and thinking about what structure you need, how big are the teams, who's going to be in them, and come back to us in a week and a half's time and tell us what you need to do and what that shape's going to be. And we really thought they were going to go away and come back with exactly the same teams as what they currently got. That's what we genuinely thought. We thought, no, they like their desks. They're not going to move desks, right? They like their friends. They're not going to, but they didn't. They came back and they completely ripped the teams apart, and they completely put them back together again around the work, right? And that's the really, really, probably the most important thing that I think that people need to take away is that as soon as you realize it's that way round, suddenly you've got a massive, massive efficiency boost without even really trying. So organize your work, then organize your people around your work. And sometimes that's hard, because you're effectively having to restructure, right? But going back to what I said in the slides 2 and 3, that restructure is healthy because that will help you drive the new culture in your organization. So identify and remove as many dependencies as you can. Every single team, whether it's small or big, is going to have a huge number of dependencies and handoffs, right? So identify what they are. Value stream map them, whatever you want to do, okay? Identify what they are and remove as many of them as you can. Because right now, they are impeding your work. And if you do decide to scale at a later date, if you do this first, it means you're going to have a far easier time when you actually do decide to roll out any scaling frameworks. So identify dependencies. And the same with bottlenecks, right? So look at the flow of work through your teams, the flow of work through your part of the organization, and say, well, where could we be better, right? What's slowing us down? Is it people? Is it environment? Is it tools? Right? There must be something that we can improve to ensure work flows through our system faster than it is currently doing. So once you've removed your bottlenecks, you're probably doing. Hopefully, most of you are doing this already, right? Literally automate out of everything. Right? Everything you can automate, you should be automating. And I think this is sometimes quite hard because development teams don't usually pitch why they want to automate very well to business stakeholders. They'll turn up, you get teams turning up to their product owners and saying, oh, we want a new build system because this one's too slow. Okay, it's not surprising that the product owner doesn't want to put his hand in the pocket given that business case, right? if you change it slightly and get someone from the team to rock up to the product owner and say, actually, what we'd like to do is reduce the build time from 2 weeks to 2 hours. Guess what? Suddenly your product owner is going to be becoming very interested in terms of how that's going to be achieved, and he may even put his hands in his pocket and start dishing out money, right? Because if he can, for a 20 or 30K outlay, reduce the release time from 2 weeks to a day, then that's something he's going to be very interested in. Automation is a big upfront cost, right? We know that, but over time, it's a massive benefit. And moving from projects to products helps massively in this. I think Phil mentioned this earlier, product focused, right? If you're still doing projects, the project manager for that project isn't really going to pay for automation because he's not going to see the benefits of it. If you're building long-term projects, suddenly you've got more of an interest in terms of how we're going to deliver stuff in the future as well. So all of those things are there that you can do even before you scale. And I guess the other thing is that you've got to make some really bold decisions, right? And that may be around your organizational structure. That may be around asking people to move teams or leave the business, right? Because some people aren't compatible with this way of working. And I'm going to say it because that sometimes is something that you need to do. But you need to ensure that if this is something you want to do, this has to be something you want to do. You have to have the buy-in to do it, right? There's a lot of people out there who do what I call faux agile, right? Or some people call it agile little a or whatever. And they go through the motions, they do all the right things, but actually they're still just as they were before, right? They're just taken a 12-month project, chopped it up into monthly chunks, and they're still doing design in sprint 1, the development in sprint 2, testing in sprint 3, and the customer may get something after sprint 4. Don't know, right? So there's a lot of faux agile going out there, and there's a lot of people using agile as an excuse not to do things as well, right? Which we need to catch. And all these problems that I've just mentioned are really hard because what you choose to do, what you elect to do when you choose a scaling mechanism and do it, is you choose to scale all of the dysfunctions that I've just mentioned out to a wider audience. So think big, start small, move fast. But remember, this team here, all the bad stuff that they do, when you scale it out, will end up being scaled massively, and you'll end up, before you know it, with an organization that's doing agile really poorly, not getting any of the benefits that you expected, and that organization will probably turn around and say, oh yeah, we tried agile, it didn't work, so we went back to how we used to do it. And I can't tell you how many companies and people I've spoken to who've basically said that to me. And it's not that Agile didn't work, it's because that company didn't allow Agile to work. They set it up for failure right from the beginning. And that could be due to lack of training, it could be scaling too early, right? So make sure that if you do choose to scale, you have the adequate agile coaching and the good enough kind of specialisms and skills in these teams before you kind of roll it out to a wider organization. So start small, think big. This will happen, right? So this is our current culture, and if I overlay kind of what I showed you earlier with that J-curve diagram on the top here, you've got your existing culture, you've got your new structure introduced, and it will be chaotic massively, all right? A lot of people at this point will turn around and say, wow, this is not working, let's go back to the way we used to do it. You need to push through that because at some point, your new behaviors will start emerging. And at that point there, you'll probably get back to the status quo you were previously. Then you've got your new habits starting to stick, and finally you've got your new culture coming out of the back of it, right? That has to be the pattern that you follow. If you follow the original one I showed on slide 3, all you're doing is rolling out Agile as a crash diet, and over time you'll just slowly, or very quickly in some cases, rubber band to back to where you were before. Don't make it a tick box exercise, all right? So one of the things we've found within the program that we're running at RBS at the moment, the Ways of Working program, is that some parts of it have become literally just a tick box exercise, right? Oh, we need to move from this state to this state, so we need to fulfill these parts of what we call the definition of done. And people just say, right, okay, so I need to do an agile assessment. Tick, done one of those. We need to organize our work. Tick, done that. We need to organize our people. Tick, done that, right? Fundamentally, all they're doing is just the barest minimum to get that tick in the box, and then they're moving on, right? So be really, really careful around tick boxes. Change is hard, as I mentioned before. Some people don't like it. It's going to affect all parts of your organization. And when I say change, I mean scaling in this instance, right? So moving anything from small to big is going to have a major, major impact on you and your teams, not just from a process perspective, but also from a kind of internal, individual expectation as well, right? People are used to working in their current way. You know that when teams move from a kind of component teams to feature teams, that's sometimes a really big jump for people, right? So QA specialists, for example, they're sitting in that room and they're the QA team. You've got the devs in this team and they're the dev team. And then you suddenly come in and say, hey, do you know what? We're going to create a cross-functional team and you're going to kind of work together. That could be quite scary for some of those people, right? And if we scale that up, it doesn't just affect QA and devs and UX designers and BAs. It affects marketing people. It affects program managers and product managers. It affects finance people, because suddenly all this change is affecting the status quo from what they've been doing for the past 10 or 15 years, right? So be really, really careful. But I guess there's two questions that I'm going to end on, right? That is, if you continuously ask yourself, you'll probably catch yourself fixing all of these problems as you go through, because you're going to have failures, but you'll get better, right? Those two questions are, is what we are doing working? And is it the right thing to do? If you continually kind of ask when you come into work, print these off, stick them up on your wall next to your desk, right? When you come in the morning, just look at that wall and say, okay, are they still both yes, right? And if either one of them are like, well, actually, I'm not sure, you need to kind of stop and say, well, why am I thinking that? What is it that's making me think, well, actually, I'm not entirely sure it is working, and I'm not entirely sure it's the right thing to do. Or maybe it is the right thing to do, but it's not working, in which case, what are you going to do about it, right? So they're two really, really important questions. I guess that's me running out of time. I hope you've enjoyed the talk. Thank you. Any questions? People just want their beer, don't they? Any questions? Yes. Yes.
I'll just shout it out. Well, all great. I actually have lots of emotional empathy with what you're saying here, but aren't you addressing it to the wrong public? Actually, it's about like in Phil's talk, you should be addressing it to the organizational leadership.
Yes. And in RBS, that's why I literally do that pretty much every single week. So I do a lot of talks to ExCo, to senior leadership, and all that kind of stuff. And the reason, some people say to me, well, hang on a minute, if you worked for McLaren and BAE Systems and all those kind of companies, why have you gone to work for RBS, right? And sometimes I ask myself the same question, but mainly it's fundamentally because it. Up until the point where I joined RBS, all of the work that I'd done around the Agile space had been bottom-up transitions. It'd be me working with teams, whether it be individual teams or multiple teams within an organization, doing Scrum, doing Kanban, getting all that kind of stuff. And at some point, we'd hit the edge of that bubble, the Agile bubble, right, where the senior leadership and management didn't understand why we were doing it or what we were doing it, exactly to your point, right? And that, I guess I got extremely frustrated with saying the same thing, batting my head against the wall, and really struggling to help them understand. Some cases we were successful, other cases we were just dealing with a load of no-nos and we couldn't get any further, right? But I think when I had the initial conversation with RBS, it was very different. It was senior leaders and management wanting this transition. And we've almost got the opposite problem at RBS right now. So we've got ExCo, senior leadership, senior management, actually totally bought in, and in most cases really understanding why we're doing this, right? Because we have a bank-wide vision to be #1 for customer service, trust, and advocacy, right? So that's what we want to achieve. And they see, as I said at the start, Agile as a vehicle to enable them to deliver on that goal, right? And the actual issue we've got now is that we've got the teams, lots of them, right, who are actually not that au fait with what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. So we've rolled out loads of training around Scrum and Scrum Master courses and all that kind of stuff. But right now we are in that position where we've got lots of teams with just enough knowledge with all those issues, right? Some of those issues I mentioned earlier, they weren't plucked out of thin air. They're things that I'm seeing right now in some of the teams, and not enough kind of agile coaching and experience to be able to share around those teams to enable them to kind of catch those problems before they kind of permeate through the rest of the organisation. It's just like osmosis, right? You know, if you've got a Scrum Master who's been on their Scrum Master course and comes back and goes, right, everyone, you're doing this, and starts telling people what to do, everyone around him sees that happening. And suddenly that part of the organisation, that's what Scrum Masters do, right? Or you come back and there's a part of the organisation with a load of Scrum teams, but there's no product owners. They're making up they're making up what it is they're delivering when, right? So it's very easy for that kind of thing to kind of permeate incorrectly when you start scaling up like this. So absolutely you are right. And one thing that I would have done differently in our Agile transformation would be to skill up and knowledge up more the exco and the senior leaders, right? Because we all thought, okay, they get it. They're telling us they want to do it, so they must understand what it is we're trying to deliver, right? So it was kind of ignored for a little bit, and we kind of concentrated on filtering down. Very, yeah. So we have managers who do Gemba walks through teams to actually understand where they are. We do gather measures, right, around how things are working. But a lot of it is gained through senior leaders coming to demos and seeing the work, and yeah, we've got Workplace at Work now, so we do a lot of sprint demos and sprint outcomes, putting on Workplace, and we get comments and people from Exco all the way down from board saying, this looks great, can I come and have a closer look at it? And they get invited down by the team and they come in and help out like that. So they are very, very bought in. So yeah, it is a major thing to consider. Yeah.
So I'm from the ex-parish of Rolls-Royce, and we had lots of senior leaders and board members coming around and doing Gembas.
Yep.
But what was more important was actually rolling out new leadership behaviours and actually using a new dictionary, new language.
Yeah. So what we've recently done, and I've been involved in building it, we have a day-long workshop called Leading Agile. And it's not about how you do Scrum or how about Kanban, it's about how it affects you as an individual, how you need to change as an individual, as a leader, right? And it takes you all the way through the full day is kind of taking you all, not just empowering people and being leaders, not managers and all that kind of stuff, but it takes you through about how it's going to change and how you need to think differently and all that kind of stuff. So we've got something like that as well that we roll out to many of our leaders. Yeah. Yes. So yes is the answer. So RBS is a multinational company. So we got offices pretty